Hello and welcome back. Today it's all about the downside of downsizing, because when I did the upside of downsizing, people said yay, loved it. What about the downsides? If you're new, I'm Deirdre. There's so much more to downsizing than just decluttering, which is difficult enough anyway. It's getting rid of things that are not clutter but won't fit in your new home. It's selling your home, it's finding a new one, it's finding the right community, it's doing your research into all sorts of things that you're going to encounter in this new phase. And I'm here to sort of help you along with my experience and what I've found out either through my own experience or through the experience of people that I've spoken to about this who have done it. And we'll start with the big one first. Let's get the elephant out of the room and let's talk about money. Now, a lot of people go into a downsize aiming to free up capital from the family home in order to finance retirement or slowing down from work. Now, the horrible truth of this is that downsizing may not free up the capital that you had hoped it would. It may, but it isn't a guarantee. The issue being that because you've moved from an area of family homes into an area that perhaps is closer to the city, but certainly closer to facilities, the price goes up. You can't say, well, hey, I had a large home, therefore a smaller home is going to cost less, because frankly it doesn't always work that way. And on top of that, the cost of things like council rates, the various taxes that are associated with living in a certain area may well be quite a lot higher. So you have to do your homework really well before you take this on, and make sure that you hunt down all of the costs, the things like utility costs, the things like insurance costs. Okay, that's the financial out of the way. There's lots to talk about with that, but that's a wee starter, bit of a hint, do your research. The second area I want to talk about is, of course, the big one, in that it's not big, it's little. So it's about space, or the lack of. Now, so number two is that decluttering is easy. Yep, you heard me, decluttering. Getting rid of useless, unloved, unwanted, unused possessions is easy. What's not easy, what's really hard, and yet what has to be done when you downsize, is that you have to get rid of loved, used, valued possessions. Things that just won't fit in your new home, that you won't have the space for. You won't be able to store them. Storage is a big deal. All of these sorts of things. The things that you just took for granted, like, the beautiful platters you used on high days and holidays. You may no longer have space for them, even though you use them, you love them, and you're going to have to change the way that you live in order to live in a smaller space. In general, you won't have the same garage space, you won't have a basement, you won't have an attic, you may not have a garden shed, you may not have a garden. You probably won't have a walk-in pantry, you may or may not have walk-in wardrobes, you may or may not have 2 bathrooms, you may or may not have a big linen press. These sorts of things. You really are going to have to reassess the way you live, not just the things you own. Number 3 is that, along with changing how much you have and the things you have, you won't be able to have people in your home the way that you could before. So you won't have the physical space for 20 people to come around for Christmas dinner, for a special meal, for a high day and holiday party. You just will not have the physical standing room even to put that many people in your apartment or your townhouse or whatever. It's very unlikely. Now, you may have a big courtyard, and on a hot, warm day you can open up everything and have an indoor-outdoor party. Yes, of course there are exceptions, but in general it's not as easy. And the same goes for out-of-town guests and people who want to stay over. You just won't have that anymore. It's less likely. I shouldn't say you won't, but it takes more money to start with to buy enough space to have guests. It's not something you can just take for granted in the same way that, for example, I did with my larger home. I just knew anybody could come and stay anytime. Wasn't an issue. Hello, this is your room, this is your bathroom, and you have all the linen that goes with it, etc. Well, of course, you've done the downsize, that sort of thing. You've got rid of the linen, remember, vast majority of it. You've got rid of it because that's part of the downsizing part. That's not clutter, but you did have to get rid of it because you don't have the space. And so it goes on, and while you may have a 2-bedroom home or even a 3-bedroom, that space becomes much tighter. Plan for it, work out what your priorities are. You may have to spend a bit more, maybe not so close to facilities, that sort of thing. It's all about balancing what's going to work for you and what's important for you. Number 4 is also about space, and it's that you just don't have it. I mean, I know it's obvious that you've downsized, you don't have the space. You have to get used to having things closer around you. Having enough furniture for people to sit down and have a chat means that it's closer together. You may not be used to this. The television's going to be closer. It's not going to be way over there. I mean, I was in a very large home, had always lived in quite large homes, so for me this was quite a big change. Keeping on with the space theme, this is number 5. You have to give up your hobbies. You may have to give up your hobbies, sorry. Keep it open. But if your hobby is woodworking and you don't have a garage and you don't, you have a carport now, going to have to go. If you had a big quilter's table in your craft room, chances are when you downsize you're not going to have space for that big quilter's table. Can you fold it? Can you do other things with it to work around it? Can you work on your dining table? This sort of thing. You can compromise. You don't necessarily have to give up. Maybe you can work on smaller pieces. All I'm saying is things will change. Now, obviously, if your hobby is gardening, then chances are in your downsized home you are not going to have your large garden. You may have a courtyard, you may have a balcony, but unlikely to have a large garden. You might have a little front garden, a little back garden. That may be enough. Maybe all you want, maybe one of the reasons you're downsizing. But I'm just saying, look at the space that your hobbies take up. Here we go, still space. Number 6, your outdoor space. One of the things that I found really hard was giving up my beautiful outdoor furniture, which had been used and used and used. That still is a big one for me, that I no longer have that space on a hot day to put up the umbrella and have friends and family over and sit around outside and just enjoy being outside. If you're going to downsize, the one thing for me, it would have been to have a courtyard, but this worked in every other way, so you compromise. Compromise is a big one up there when you downsize. Now let's get into those emotional / psychological sort of personal things. So number 7 is that you don't have the same room for self-expression. Before, when you were living in your detached family home, if you wanted to paint it pink, local rules notwithstanding, you could paint it pink if you wanted to. But when you're living in a group environment, you simply don't have that ability. You have to abide by the co-op board and that sort of thing. There are rules about what you can put on your balconies, what you can hang on your windows, all the rest of things, and let alone the colours that you paint your front door. All sorts of things are governed by the community, and I don't disagree with it, but it does get a bit of getting used to. If you're not in an individual detached home or even a semi-detached, like a townhouse, you do lose a little bit of that freedom of self-expression. Number 8 is about less space, closer living, more densely packed. Now look, your downsize might have been to the beach or to a tree change in the country, but it's mostly that people move to apartments, to townhouses, to smaller homes closer in to facilities and that sort of thing, as I've said. So it's more of what I'm talking about. In those situations, you have to get used to having neighbourhood noise that is closer to you than it probably was. So today, in order to film this, I have dodged the guy down a couple of doors down who was refitting his kitchen. Great guy, refitting his kitchen using a power saw outside his door. It's noisy. What can I say? He's using tools, he's doing his work. It's good. Can I film? No, I can't. That's the thing. It's just got to get used to it. As I started to say this, my neighbour next to me decided she was putting out her recycling, and it's not a quiet job. She was clanking and banging away down the stairs. A helicopter went over, not to do with being in the city, probably, more here than anywhere else I've lived, because I'm right in the inner city. A low flying helicopter, so police or ambulance just went over the top and skimmed the top of the apartment block, as they do, quite very loudly. I have to get used to that. Other people have issues with, the family next door has noisy kids. Kids are noisy. You want kids to be able to play with reasonable expression. Babies cry. You have to get used to that. So that loss of space doesn't mean physical, just mean physical. It can mean that, the noise, hearing people coming and going, that sort of thing is quite different. Number 9 is about relationship space, because for a lot of people they downsize when they retire. So you've had 2 big changes that happen at the same time. The first one is that you're no longer disappearing, you and your dearly beloved that is, disappearing off into different directions every day. Suddenly you're at home together. That's one big change and needs negotiating. And the other one is if you then downsize at the same time, and many people do, that you've compounded it by having not just the other person and you're in their space and they're in yours for more hours a day than you were used to, which sounds lovely to start with, but can, for some people, can be an issue. But you've also then shrunk your space down. So whereas, one of you might like to watch the sport and used to go into a rec room or a rumpus room, a den, whatever, and watch the telly in there and it was all fine and you're at the other end of the house doing what you want to do, now those rooms are together. You've got the TV in my case, I've got it in a little side area here, but it does mean that the distance in the public space is, sort of like 10 steps, whereas it used to be closer to 80, something like that. You get the idea? You're really right on top of people. So it means that you have to work with anybody that you live with to negotiate your space, your personal space, your private space. So you're going to have to be a lot more careful with it. Put on your headphones to watch the sport, put on your headphones to sit and read a book, noise cancelling headphones, go to a library, go to a park, depending on the weather. Give each other a bit of space. So it's a good idea to say if you're having your day out at golf, that your partner is then free to be at home and in the quiet of the home by themselves, and vice versa. I'm not saying this that you do it a lot, you still do a lot together, but it's just that negotiating of personal space that is hard enough when people initially retire or cut down their work hours and they're spending more time in the home. But if you then reduce the size of the home, it can be a big issue. Number 10, also in that emotional side, is that you could be leaving your comfort zone. This is huge because human people, animals, any of us, we like our comfort zone. We like our territory. We know where we live. That's where we shopped. This is where we had our coffee. That's where you go to the library. This is the doctor. All of those things you may be leaving. You're leaving your neighbours, your friends. You are moving outside of your comfort zone. So you're not just changing your home and your lifestyle often, but you're changing the area and what you feel comfortable with. Number 11, another one that might be big. If you're moving into like a condo, apartment, townhouse, whatever, some sort of group environment, there may not be pets. You may not be able to take your pets with you. And I know this is changing a lot, but in the past it used to have strict no pet policies in many areas, or the number of pets or the size of your pets. So, your Irish Wolfhound may have to find a new home. But also for your pets' point of view, it's a big change, because if your cat's been used to being a little alpha king cat of the neighbourhood and having a good roam, or if your dog has had a big backyard to loll around in the sun in, and then suddenly they're on a balcony or they're in an apartment or in a courtyard, then that's a big change for them. And the dog may bark, the cat may be a bit antisocial, like scratch furniture and things like that. So be aware that you're not the only one who's feeling it, and also that you may or may not be able to take your animals with you, and that may be a huge thing in the decisions that you make. So do your research really well on that. Okay, let's get personal. What do I miss? This is number 12. I miss the birds, I miss the silence, I miss the quiet, cool nights when the breeze would come up the valley. I miss the darkness where I had beautiful stars. It was dark where I lived. I miss the clean air. I miss the animals coming through. I literally had kangaroos hopping through the neighbourhood, and there was Mr. Charlie Koala who would go up the river every year, and you'd hear him. He would call at night. He would let you know he had packed his little holiday suitcase and he was on his way up the river. I miss it. I miss the river. Yes, of course it's there, and I do go and walk the river where I am now. It's a different part of the river, but I'm still on it. It's Melbourne. We have a river that, the Yarra winds its way through. But where I was, it was more wild. It was beautiful. Here it's a much tamer river. But mainly, I think it's the environment I miss. I miss the trees and the birds and the animals and the silence and the stars at night in the river, and Charlie Koala. What can I say? You make changes and you adapt and you go forward, but do your homework, find out what you really value, make sure that you get some of it into your life, and take it from there. Okay, I know it was huge, but I wanted to really talk about this just to sort of touch some of those areas, the different things that different people will encounter as you go through this process. And it is big, and the upside's fun, the downside's there. So there we are. I hope that was useful. I hope that it gave you something to think about, to look at when you're planning your downsize, or at least to know that others feel the same way, which is always a good thing to know that you're not the only one feeling like that. So let's just all learn how to manage this, make decisions based on our real research so that we don't go into things blind. And that's all I was trying to do today. So if you like this sort of video, I'd love you to subscribe, hit that notification bell to let you know when I'm uploading a video. And I hope that whatever you're doing today, you're having a lovely time. And I will see you in the next one. Bye.